Rain, rain, and more rain. That's all I have to say about that. For most of the southeast U.S., the rain just won't stop. A few areas are experiencing some drought, but they are very small. Chris, Jeff, and I will look at where we are right now and what we can expect in the coming weeks and months in the February Water Resources Outlook.
Okay, it's been an incredible February for rain across the region, and here we see the last 30 days of precipitation in that wide swath of purple, meaning 10 inches or more across such a large area of the region in just the past 30 days. And as far as departures from normal, we see many areas 4 to 6 inches above normal for the past 30 days across many of the headwater basin areas of the southeast. Many of the rivers for the southeast begin across northern Alabama, northern Georgia, and the upstate areas of the Carolinas. And when we look back across the past 90 days, which is roughly the winter season, we see just how wet it's been this year, with departures some 8 to 16 inches above normal there in the purple colors. The flip side, look at Florida, the Florida Peninsula, relatively dry. This is their dry season, so even drier than typical. So how has all this precipitation affected stream flows? As you would expect, record high stream flows in many rivers, with others running much above normal, seeing the black and blue colors there. And much of these above normal flows are notably in the upper reaches of river systems, so lots of water drain out downstream over the coming weeks. Most of Florida still seeing near normal flows. So let's look at the monthly timeline perspective, and we see an amazing chart here with stream flows going from record lows back in October. Remember that hot and dry weather we had most of the late summer? Now we're seeing record high stream flows and an unbelievable turnaround in just 4 or 5 months. We went from potentially serious drought in the autumn to widespread significant flooding this winter. And this has put a toll on our reservoirs and reservoir operators for sure, trying to manage this water with these big swings. Here we look at the reservoirs and their pool levels compared to their target levels for this time of year, and we see across the North Carolina and part of Virginia here, pool levels are all running above normal, with several running several feet above normal and needing to get rid of water. In South Carolina, the same. Most pool levels running at or above guide curve, especially those reservoirs that are flood control, such as the Savannah River Project. In North Georgia, looking at Alatoona, 20 feet above guide curve as they are storing those flood waters. Interesting that last year they were about this high as well in February into March. Lake Lanier inflows have been high all winter, and so they have been discharging quite a bit of water up there, and their pools are still running 6 feet above guide curve. Further down on the Chattahoochee and into the Apalachicola, we see all the lakes higher than guide curve right now. Several locations are running above flood levels at this time, including down in Blentstown near just down below Woodruff Dam. Into Alabama, across northern Alabama, the flood control reservoirs there at Smith and Weiss are holding some water. You see Neely Henry there. They're actually running 4.5 feet below their guide curve. And this may look strange, but they actually are lowering their pool to reduce backwater flooding upstream from the lake. And so that is why you're seeing that level. Looking at the lakes in Tallapoosa and Coosa, we see their lakes running closer to guide curve as water is managed upstream. So many rivers are in flood across the region, especially in the lower reaches of the rivers. And so, as you can see, flooding is not unusual this time of year. In fact, it is fairly typical, and we are near or at our peak time period climatologically.
So you're all thinking, why show the drought monitor this week? Well, we do have an area along the Big Bend of Florida, down on the Gulf Coast, and we do show some dryness along that coast and especially around Tallahassee. It seems that a lot of the storm systems have moved through and dropped a lot of rain over Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, and then have just kind of skipped that Florida part and gone on. So we do have a little bit of dryness, and even as creeping down as far as the Tampa area. So they are in their dry season, so this probably doesn't have as big an impact for this time of year. And as we approach the spring and summer, where they start to get into their wet season, this could possibly change. But yes, for right now, we do have a little bit of dryness in Florida.
We are beginning the period with a front departing the southeast. As the front departs, high pressure will set up across the region and stay in place across the remainder of the short-term period. High pressure is expected to still be in place for the early portion of the midterm period, though models are indicating the potential for a system to move in by the end of the midterm. This is still a ways out, so we'll be watching for what changes occur in the depiction of this system. Here's the 7-day precipitation forecast. In the Florida Peninsula, we see the rainfall associated with the departing front early in the short-term period, and across the northern and western portions of our forecast area, we see precipitation associated with the system late in the midterm period. The long-term outlook indicates above normal precipitation amounts for much of the southeast. This is mainly due to the system late in the midterm, expected to continue into the long-term period.
Well, as we look out a little bit further, ENSO conditions remain neutral and with above normal equatorial sea surface temperatures, but not warm enough to be an El Nino. It looks like those equatorial waters will dip its temperature and cool a little later this year, although neutral conditions look to remain and will prevail for the duration of the forecast. Another indicator that we occasionally look at to gauge if we are going to have above or below normal rainfall is the Arctic Oscillation. You might have heard of it as the AO. In time of positive AO in the past, much of the southeast stays dry with an area of above normal rainfall from Arkansas through Kentucky being wet. As you notice from the circle, shows a lot of the southeast being in dry conditions. We have had a positive AO for much of the year, and if we had looked to this to make our forecast for January and February, we likely would have been a little bit off. As Jeff has indicated, the axis of above normal rainfall ended up pushing further south and has affected nearly all of the southeast, except for an area in Big Bend of Florida, which just keeps missing the heavy rain. This is more indicative of a neutral AO. I illustrate this because the past isn't always going to be a reliable indicator of what we can expect in the future. We continue to look and make forecasts so that we can improve, and I believe we will in the future. Better models and better understanding of our climate will help us along that way. With that, let's look at the March forecast for rainfall in the southeast from the Climate Prediction Center. Wet weather persists in the southeast as systems are tracking far enough south to bring us rain fairly frequently as we get into March. Even normal rainfall for March will likely produce flooding due to wet conditions across most of the area. The seasonal forecast from March through May continues that wet trend, so it looks like we may go from an active winter on into an active spring in the southeast. A little further out with the forecast for June through August indicates a shift north of the potential above normal rainfall, more into the mid-Atlantic states. We will likely stay active through much of this year with flooding. Hopefully we get some rain in the Florida Panhandle and end some of the drought issues there. And so the bottom line, in the short term, it looks like continued active weather pattern, maybe a short reprieve coming in the next week or two. It doesn't look quite as active as it has been, but still doesn't take that much rain now to produce flooding across the area, and that means continued flooding threat across much of the southeast U.S. In the long term, a neutral ENSO conditions, those conditions look to continue through the winter and into the spring, and looks like maybe even into the summer. Winter should remain active and normal to above normal rainfall with above normal to normal flooding across the southeast U.S. Well, March is right on our doorstep, and we look to record our next water resources outlook around March 19th. It could end up becoming the next week. We'll look to see how much flooding is going on and when we get the opportunity to do that. But until then, stay tuned to all of our other products, and please make sure you call us if you have any questions or comments about what we're working on. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next month.